Alright, here we go. It's another review of Samurai Jack, and I gotta be honest, this one surprised me not just with how the story went, but also with how the subject matter was presented. This episode in particular takes a break from focusing on the atmosphere and instead focuses more on the action and the struggles that Jack faces after his first fight with the sisters. There's also some more emphasis on character interactions, both silently and with dialogue, both of which actually do a good service with the narrative approach that this episode takes. I've had more time to think about this opening scene since it was leaked early as a preview of the episode. It has a soft and subtle tone as we watch Jack being carried away in the river with some nice detail considering how the crimson colors of the blood mixes in with the water. It also has some really good shots like this one where it holds onto Jack flowing up the river at a rapid speed. This couldn't have been easy to animate, and it has this way of quietly leading you into the sudden jolts of intensity that follow. The next segment with Jack walking across the forest in a severely weakened state is a heavy hitter, not just in the atmosphere, but with the emotions as well. Jack is on the verge of death, completely vulnerable as he succumbs to his wounds. It's pretty hard to see Jack like this since he's always had a way of pulling through, but now he feels truly defeated. He's desperately trying to stay alive, realizing how threatened he has become in this new world. The visuals match this feeling to a T as Jack slowly navigates through a dry and lifeless forest. Each shot consisting of dead trees, gloomy shadows, and a dim blue background. All of them reflecting the sense of hopelessness that Jack is going through. And the music is hypnotizingly haunting. It has a looming presence that truly gives you the impression that Jack is moments away from death and how at this point he's forcing himself to keep going. Without the sword, he's merely a weakened and mentally aged warrior with hardly any reason to keep fighting. He's reached a level of despair that's unique to him, and the music translates this feeling flawlessly, having a real purpose to its presence in this scene. And as Jack goes deeper into the forest, the scars and blood on his body become darker, highlighting the severity of his wounds and completely sucking you into the pain that he's bearing. He finds himself in a cave where he ends up doing the worst thing he could do at this time, which is pulling the dagger out of his wound without any immediate method of tending to it. Granted, he does sew it later, but it still feels like it's feeding into a running theme in this episode, which is unfortunately one of its weaker elements. But I don't want to ruin this review by messing up the flow of the pacing by starting to complain, so we'll save that for later. We then get another confrontation between Jack and his inner self as he contemplates that this was Jack's first human kill. What I don't understand, though, is why Jack would be struggling over this if this is not the first time he's killed an organic. Even Gendy himself confirmed this in an interview. But the scene still has stuff to really like about it. This time around, inner Jack looks incredibly menacing and unstable. The way his body is modeled into a much sharper design and the way his teeth have become sharper hints at how Jack is becoming closer and closer to completely being consumed by his own madness. It could also be a sign that this inner Jack is now gaining an advantage over Jack due to how he's feeling uncomfortable with this first human kill that he committed. From the facial expressions to the way he moves his body around, inner Jack has clearly become more threatening in what seems to be a short amount of time. The way he speaks to Jack this time is very different from before, and his words are far more threatening. He's no longer suicidal and completely drowning in hopelessness as much as he's now gloating Jack over his weakened state, both physically and mentally. He antagonizes him over the idea of committing his first killing of flesh and blood, like he's using this to give himself some solid ground in order to win an argument against True Jack. More horrifyingly, inner Jack is telling True Jack that he wants to die by the hands of someone else so he won't have to feel like a coward through ending his own life. He's really digging into Jack's mind to find a weak point to completely break him, and True Jack is really having a hard time holding off these words. But his spirit still remains strong as he's willing to fight any threat that enters the cave with what little strength he has left. Surprisingly, it's the wolf from the last episode, and it seems to take pity on Jack, helping him to recover and regain his strength. Before that, though, we see a flashback of Jack as a child playing with his toys with his parents as they travel when bandits attack their carriage. With their guards dead, Jack's father is left with no choice but to stand up to them and defend his family. The scene has a nice bit of subtlety to it in the beginning as we just see Jack in a peaceful moment of his childhood with his parents that quickly becomes one of his darkest memories. The moment is fairly paced in the way that it slowly transitions to its darker tone, and what's really impressive is the personality of Jack as a child. Easily one of the show's most iconic strengths. Jack as a child has never had any dialogue, and yet so much character comes out of him, and this scene is no exception. His mind is in an innocent place as he believes he's safe with his family, but it quickly shifts to fear when the bandits attack. Worried for his father, he struggles out of his mother's arms to check on him, only to be shocked and horrified of the slaughter that ensues. We later see him being cleaned of his bloodstains as his father tries to reassure him over the things he saw. Speaking of reflections and how your actions speak for your character, while also translating to Jack how killing does not need to be a means to cause harm, rather than a means to survive. He tells Jack that he doesn't have to feel sorry for the choices that others have made for themselves. If the enemy is choosing to place Jack in a situation where he has no choice but to defend himself and those he wishes to protect, he doesn't have to feel any form of guilt of the actions that he has to take in order to ensure that protection. Jack takes time to really think about what his father said that day, and only now is he truly starting to understand what those words mean. With his survival being of utter importance, he knows and accepts what he must do when the sisters come back for him. A new spark of determination is born within him as he prepares for battle, but first he has to recover alongside the wolf. The communication between Jack and the wolf is very well done. It's translated without any form of dialogue and expressing how they feel for each other simply through their body language. There's a soft atmosphere to the way the two warm up to each other while the wolf offers Jack different ways to heal from his wounds. Jack has a hard time understanding the wolf at first, but he eventually recognizes his connection to it and openly allows the wolf to tend to his needs on his own terms. He avoids being a burden to the wolf by allowing it to tend to his needs on his own. And Jack has a nice way of allowing himself to trust this creature. And when the time comes for the wolf to leave, Jack ensures that it's time for him to be on his own. In order to survive, he must learn from this experience and harden his instincts on his own, which is not something that the wolf can keep teaching him to do. The moment is silent with them just staring into each other's eyes, but it still greatly reflects the mutual understanding the two have developed for each other. And they part ways exactly the way that they should. The first half of this episode is ingeniously done, focusing on Jack's survival and his coping with the idea of killing to survive without transitioning to any heavy action or being interrupted by the sisters. It maintains a strong sense of focus, knowing how to prioritize in exploring Jack's struggle before building up the rest of the episode. A strong sense of pacing is felt here, and it makes the segue into the second half all the more meaningful. Of course, what follows is the daughters pursuing Jack, and we do get a chance to learn more about them. We see how they really treat their dead sister like dirt, seeing her as a failure for dying in pursuit of Jack. Yet, they still show enough respect for her by leading her body out of the temple as opposed to just leaving it inside to rot. They could have not wasted time in dragging her corpse, but knowing that they did seems to express a small hint of gratitude in them. Or at least the one who cared to haul her body out. Their pursuit of Jack also has a pretty epic tone to it, with nicely orchestrated music fitting the vibe of the scene. They also regain their strength through sleep in a form of meditation, while I'm guessing Ashi keeps watch. Considering she's become the most resolved of the group, it's easy to see that resting is the least of her concern. But there is a hint of complexity to it as we see how she takes time to just relax and look out into the night sky with a shooting star flying out into the distance. It shows that despite her brutal upbringing, her traits that she had as a child are still present, showing how she's drawn to the light in this world that Aku supposedly helped make, as well as her desire to guard it. The sisters also experience something that leaves them confused as they see a deer and his mate infatuated with each other. This really goes to show the strength of the indoctrination that was placed on them when they were kids, like they assumed that the male would feast on the female to ensure its strength over the weak because that's how they were taught. Their confusion also has a somewhat innocent hint of curiosity to it as they don't necessarily deny what they're seeing. The nature of what is before them is completely alien to them, and they mostly feel motionless about it, as if they were completely turned to stone as they observe it. But they soon resume their hunt for Jack and prepare for battle as Jack offers them the same advice that his father offered once before. He tells them that the path they're on is one that they've chosen for themselves, so whatever happens to them is of their own consequence. This gives Jack a stronger conscience over the idea of killing any more of them, considering both his offer of mercy and his new understanding of the need to survive. Snow begins to cover the battle area, slowly building up the tension. He hops out of the snow, and the battle begins with him impaling and killing the second sister. This fight is very well timed and directed, showing off the experience and skill of both sides as well as their ability to read each other's moves. The way Jack kills the remaining sisters is also done in a humane way, at least when compared to the way his father killed those bandits. He finishes them with basic stabs to the chest and knocking them off their balance over a deadly drop as opposed to cutting them in half. The speed of the battle is also expertly kept in check and supervised, allowing us to see how Jack is still strategically agile and focused, using both the environment and his enemy's strategy and equipment to his advantage. It builds up to a clever moment where he chooses to abandon his club since he's in an environment where he now has a complete advantage even without it. His familiarity with this setting allows him to fight off the remaining three sisters as he keeps his momentum evened out while the sisters become more aggravated, leading them to becoming careless. It all leads up to Ashi being the last one to face Jack as she breaks down in anger, cursing Jack as her only remaining means to spite him, considering she's been left in a position where she's unable to fight back. Jack silently takes her criticism and simply lets her go as she continues to curse him while falling into the forest below. And the episode concludes with Jack falling along with her due to the broken branch. One flaw that the episode has is that it really has a tendency to go beyond its boundaries by pulling a lot of hard-to-buy features. The first being that Jack probably should have died long before he even got to the cave. He survives things that really should have killed him, most notably being the amount of blood he lost. As powerful as Jack is, he's still human, so it feels repetitive for him to constantly lose consciousness only to get it back and then lose it again immediately after. It happens 4 times in the first 6 minutes. And I really don't get why he'd pull the dagger out if he couldn't think of an immediate way to sew the wound, which would have led to him bleeding out faster. Even worse, the wolf manages to show up entirely on its own with no sign of its heavy wounds from that last fight. There's no large gashes or scars, just small cuts and a minor wound on its paw. What really irks me about it is that there is no way the wolf could have survived on its own with its wounds being that severe. It wouldn't have been able to walk properly, and it was clearly shown to have bled out from its wounds. I just have a really hard time believing that it would have made it that far with no sign of being able to heal, just magically doing it off screen. There's also a few noticeable animation errors, such as the dagger missing in Jack's body while he's flowing across the river, and how he drops his club during the fight, but magically gets it back in his hands. However, the older episodes had animation errors too, so I won't really hold it against this one. But even with its ridiculous moments, this episode was still great, and yet another fulfilled follow-up to last week. I've heard that the intended opening for this season was supposed to start playing after the first 3 episodes, though I still don't understand why. I mean, they could have just as easily started playing it from the second one. This episode is mostly a compilation of everything that people love about the show. Scenes without dialogue helping to convey the story, strong character connections, intense fight sequences, well-flowing pacing, settling atmosphere, beautiful music, smart allegories and philosophies, and its more mature themes make it more energized and confronting. With that in mind, there's only so many more episodes left, and I'm hoping that the overall story can wrap up properly with how much time they have left. Thanks for watching, and feel free to share this video wherever you want. And if you're new here and are interested in future content, feel free to subscribe to this channel. Until next time, be sure to take care of yourselves and have a great day. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.
Watch out, don't do that. Back check, 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 check.